Living in Singapore, we sometimes think that whatever happens far away, like in the Middle East or something, would not affect us much, but actually that's not really true. When the tension in the Middle East already escalated and involving major players like Iran and also United States, there are implications, for example, in oil price, inflation, etc. And eventually, you might be wondering, how will this impact my property value? If you are a homeowner, an aspiring HDB upgrader, or a seasoned investor, here is how the ripples from the Middle East can actually reach the Singapore real estate market. The first one is inflation. So the most direct link between the Middle East and your home loan is inflation. A significant portion of the world's oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz in Iran. When conflict flares up, oil prices usually spike. For Singapore, which imports almost all its energy, this means higher costs for everything from construction materials to the electricity used to power a show flat. When energy prices drive up inflation, central banks like the US Federal Reserve may keep interest rates higher for longer to cool the economy down. What it means for you? Well, since Singapore's interest rates generally track global trends, a prolonged conflict could mean your mortgage stays expensive. If you're hoping for a quick drop in bank rates to buy that new house, a war in the Middle East might just put those hopes on ice. And then the second impact is the safe haven effect. This might sound ironic, but global chaos oftentimes makes Singapore look better to the rest of the world. In the investment world, we call this a flight to safety. When investors are worried about instability in Europe or in the Middle East, they look for safe havens, places with a stable government, a strong currency, and transparent laws. Singapore is essentially the gold standard for this in Asia. So we might see an uptick in terms of the foreign demand. While cooling measures such as the 60% ABSD for foreigners have slowed down speculative buying, high net worth individuals still see Singapore property as a way to preserve their wealth. And then in terms of price support, this constant safe haven demand acts as a floor for prices. Even when the world feels like it's falling apart, Singapore's land scarcity and reputation for stability keep property prices from crashing the way they might be in other countries. And then the third aspect is on construction and potential BTO delays. If you are waiting for a BTO or new launch condo, the impact is more physical. The construction industry is highly sensitive to global supply chains. Conflict in the Middle East often affects shipping routes such as the Suez Canal or the Red Sea. If shipment of raw materials or specialized equipment are diverted, shipping costs will go up. And then in terms of labor and material costs, higher fuel prices mean it costs more to transport sand, steel, and tiles. Developers already facing tight margins may pass these costs on to buyers or even worse, face delays in completion. And then there's also the psychology of the wait and see. Property is as much about mood as it is about money. When news headlines are filled with talk about regional escalation or global uncertainty, the average Singaporean buyer tends to become more cautious. So first-time buyer might delay their purchase to see whether the price will drop, although they rarely do in Singapore. For HDB upgrader, they become more sensitive to monthly mortgage repayments. And then for investor, you might shift focus from capital gain to rental yield as a hedge. But if the conflict in the Middle East evolves from a short-term flare-up into a forever war spanning several years, the impact on Singapore's property market shifts from mere jitters to a structural change in how we live and invest. So here are some of the potential implications. Number one is the higher for longer interest rate reality. In normal economy, interest rates go up to fight inflation and come down when the economy cools. However, a multi-year war creates a supply-side shock because of expensive oil and broken trade routes that central banks can't easily fix. Most Singaporean home loans are pegged to some Singaporean home loans are pegged to SORA. If global inflation stays high because of energy costs, the US Federal Reserve may be forced to keep interest rates elevated for years. And we might have to move away from the cheap money era of 1% or 2% interest rates. A new normal of 3.5% to 4.5% could become a permanent fixture. For a $1 million loan, the difference between 2% and 4% interest is roughly $1,000 extra per month in terms of repayment. And then there is also a scenario of the 3-year drag. If the conflict drags on for several years, we would likely see 3 distinct phases in Singapore property market. So year 1 would be the hesitation phase. This is when we will see transaction volumes drop. Buyers adopt a wait-and-see approach. And also sellers tend to hold firm. Unless they are in financial distress, most Singaporean sellers who are generally well capitalized will wait for better days rather than slash prices. And then on year 2, the cost push phase. New launch prices will rise because if the war persists, the cost of embodied energy such as the fuel used to make and ship steel and cement stays high. Developers cannot lower prices without losing money. So new condo prices remain sticky even if the demand is soft. For HDB resale, we might see spike in demand. Buyers who are priced out from expensive condo or intimidated by high bank might flock to safety of HDBs and CPF-backed HDB loans. And then year 3 onwards, we might see some structural shift. We might see rental market boom. If people are too afraid or unable to buy due to high interest rates, they will rent. This could lead to a sustained period of high rental yields, making property attractive again, not for flipping, but for monthly income. And then you might see flight to quality. Investors might stop looking at speculative outskirts and focus only on prime areas, such as CCR and RCR that have historically proven to hold value during long-term global crisis. And then we might also see the safe haven becomes a permanent home. In a multi-year global conflict, Singapore's role might change. It isn't just a place to park money, it might become a place where the world's wealthy want to move their families and businesses permanently to escape instability, especially for ultra-high net worth individuals or families. We might see an increase in family offices, while these individuals might face high taxes such as the high ABSD. Their presence supports the luxury rental market and high-end commercial sector. Or they might rent for a while and then become a PR and then buy the property. We might also see the dam effect, where Singapore's cooling measures act like a dam. If the global situation gets truly dire and the economy slows significantly, the government has the luxury of being able to reduce these taxes to stimulate the market. This gives our property market a safety net that many other cities don't have. So in summary, should you worry? Well, historically, the Singapore property market has been incredibly resilient to geopolitical shocks, whether it was the Gulf War, the Iraq War, or previous tensions with Iran. The long-term trend for Singapore property has remained upward. While a conflict involving Iran and United States might cause short-term volatility, mostly through higher interest rates and more expensive petrol, it rarely changes the fundamental fact that Singapore is a tiny island with a growing population and very little land. The takeaway is, don't let the headlines panic you into snap decision. Focus on your own financial safety distance and ensure you can handle your mortgage even if interest rates stay high. And remember, in Singapore, property is a marathon and not a sprint. But let me know, what do you think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye. To support my work, you can give a one-time tip by pressing the thanks button, pick the amount that you want, and click buy and send. Or you can also press the join button for exclusive contents and monthly membership. Your support means a lot to keep us independent. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.